Hello, Aishwarya ma'am. Am I audible?
Hello. Hi.
Hi, ma'am. Myself Aditya.
Hi, Aditya.
Ma'am, can you check if you can share your screen?
Yes, I'd love to do that. It said this link is being live streamed. Is it on already?
It's on air already, ma'am.
Okay. Would you let me know when we are good to start?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. I'll let you know, ma'am.
Good. Let me try and share my screen. Can you see my screen, Aditya?
Yes, ma'am. It's clear and visible, ma'am.
All right, perfect. I will stop share then for now.
Yeah, ma'am. I will intimate you once we are ready, good to go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mic? எனக்கு ஒரு மைக் தாமா, எனக்கு ஒரு மைக் தான். மைக் இல்லையா? Hello, Aishwarya madam. Welcome to Sairam College, ICC Iot 2022. Hi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brenda.
Happy to connect with you.
Sorry, I lost you there. Can you hear me?
Hello, Aishwarya.
Am I audible? Am I audible?
Ma'am, is it audible?
Yes.
Hello, Aishwarya. Hello, audible?
Yes, I can hear you well.
Oh, it's okay.
I think there's a slight echo.
Hello, ma'am. Aishwarya?
That's much better.
Much better. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Do you have any slides to share, Aishwarya, madam?
Yes. Would you like me to go ahead and start
Try
sharing?
that, ma'am.
Yeah. I just tried it with Aditya a while ago. Let me put on my slide.
Okay, no issues. Okay. Okay, we will start, ma'am. 1 minute, ma'am. Yes, comparing this.
With every morning, there comes another chance for you to prove yourself, for your dreams to come true. To be inspired is great, but to be an inspiration is an honor. I welcome our distinguished chairman and CEO, Sri Sai Prakash Leonuthu. I take great privilege in welcoming our principal, Dr. K. Porfumi. The best teachers are those who show you where to look but don't tell you what to see. Their actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, and do more. I welcome Dr. J. Raja, General Chair, IC3 IoT, Dean Academics, and HOD Department of ECE. A teacher's job is to take a bunch of wires and see that they all are grounded. I request Dr. S. Brinda, Conference Chair, IC3 IoT, Professor, Department of ECE. Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others. I welcome Dr. E. Priya, Publication Chair, Professor, Department of ECE. The only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into impossible. I would like to welcome Dr. Aishwarya Bangla, Chair, IEEE Engineering in Medicine and Biology Society, Singapore Chapter, Professional Activities Chair, IEEE Singapore Section, Head of Translation Core, National University of Singapore. She heads the Translation Core at the N1 University for Health and National University of Singapore. She holds a PhD in biomedical engineering from NUS, and her research focuses on wearable bioengineering solutions for supportive care in cancer. She's also a part of executive committees of the IEEE Asia Pacific Human Engineering and EMB Global Young Professionals. May I request Dr. Aishwarya Bangla to share your thoughts about the topic wearable health tech for cancer supportive care. Please, ma'am.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. A very good morning to all of you gathered there in person, and a good day for all of you all joining us online. I certainly miss being there in person in Chennai, and it's lovely to see you all gathered there in this hybrid format. Congratulations to the conference committee for this successful event put together, and also my gratitude to all the dignitaries gathered there, and for Dr. Brinda for inviting me to speak at this conference. So I'm Aishwarya Bangla, and I head the translational core at the N1 Institute for Health, which is a multidisciplinary and multidisciplinary research institute at the National University of Singapore, which is geared towards clinical translation of technology. And in today's talk, I look forward to sharing with you my experience in what I would say a fairly successful medical device journey, which I've been fortunate to have been part of over almost a decade now. As part of IEEE, I also chair the Engineering in Medicine and Biology Singapore chapter, and I'm part of the Singapore section professional activities and also part of the Women in Engineering Asia Pac committee. So look forward to collaborations of any sort from all of you all. Okay, let me get started. As you all can see, the title of my talk reads Wearable Health Tech for Cancer Supportive Care, and the medical device journey which I spoke about is catered towards cancer survivors and addresses a very key and important side effect of cancer therapy, which cancer survivors around the world face today. And I will touch upon briefly the design thinking approach, which our multidisciplinary team put together to tackle this issue and get on with the journey of the medical device development itself. Before I delve into the details of the story, let me zoom out a little bit and start with the why and the what. So you can see some big numbers here. And as you can see, the wearables market is booming and it is transforming lives around the world. And most of us are guilty of owning some form of wearable health tech, be it your wearable tracker, where you almost have an everyday habit of checking your step count and your heart rate, and kind of have the power of actively managing your health status in your own hands. That being said, when we think of wearables, like I said, we think of this, our wearable trackers, wrist-worn trackers. But in fact, wearables encompass a very huge number of healthcare and life-saving technology for reducing disease burden and for improving disease care. Like you see, it's a huge variety, which is essentially non-invasive and wearable on different parts of the body. And let's take a peek into how this wearable tech or wearable health tech is changing lives of cancer patients. I'm sure all of you are curious, aren't you? Again, continuing to talk about big numbers, we have one of the leading causes of mortality and morbidity around the world. And reports say that each and every one of us, in some way or the other, has been touched by someone or has had either someone dear to us or either family, friends, or someone in a nearby circle touched by this killer disease, cancer. And with tremendous increases in therapy and disease care, advances in cancer therapeutics, we've seen that the survivorship, the cancer cure rates, and the median survival times have tremendously increased in the last couple of decades. And for example, the number of breast or colon cancer survivors, which are two of the largest occurring cancers in the world, are affected by mortality rates, which are very huge. However, we are very grateful for the advances in cancer care, that these mortality rates before the 2000s were almost double of what we witness today. However, on the flip side, the large number of patients who go on to survive cancer for a long time have brought into focus issues which affect their quality of daily living. And these issues bundled up to called as survivorship issues. They include a new array of long-term side effects which did not come into focus in the past few decades, because cancer patients did not go on to survive for such a long period. Now that we have survivorship rates increase, we see this quality of life issues go on to affect almost 5 million cancer patients annually worldwide. Some of the major side effects associated with cancer care, which we all must be familiar with, and which not only patients, but also physicians who treat the patients are very concerned about, include nausea, vomiting, loss of appetite, fatigue, chemo-induced hair loss, and also weakened immune systems. We are looking at very good medications for many of these chemotherapy side effects, and many of these side effects, such as nausea and vomiting, are even mitigated by medicines, and this helps the cancer survivors go on to work even while they are undergoing their weekly chemotherapy regimen over a few months. To deal with hair loss, it's also called chemotherapy-induced alopecia. There is a successful treatment, or I would say preventive care, which is called scalp cooling. And scalp cooling, as you can see, essentially is a cap which goes on the head of the cancer patients while they are undergoing their chemotherapy. And this is currently standard of care around the world. And what this does is, while the patients are undergoing their chemotherapy, the scalp cooling prevents the exposure of the chemotherapy, the toxic chemotherapy chemicals, to the hair follicles of the patient, and hence reduces hair fall to a great degree, which has been proven in several studies, and patients around the world opt for this to tackle chemo-induced alopecia. Apart from these, there are certain long-term issues which have not been tackled. And this is going to be the focus of our talk. And one of this is chemotherapy-induced peripheral neuropathy. Though it may sound like a bunch of lot of words put together, this is one of the long-term problems which have unfortunately not been addressed so far. And what does chemotherapy-induced neuropathy mean? It's essentially nerve damage due to the toxic chemicals, which is constituent of chemotherapy. And just as the chemo affects the hair follicles, damages it, and causes hair loss, it also affects the nerve endings in our fingertips and toe tips of patients undergoing chemotherapy. And over a few weeks of chemotherapy, it damages the nerve endings, and that manifests as heavy pain and numbness, which can even go on to last for several years after the patient has been cured of cancer, but presents with new different problems, which, like I said, are called survivorship issues, and severely affect the quality of life. And looking at the biological mechanisms, it is unfortunate that the same mechanisms which are targeted to kill the cancer cells also cause these collateral damage to the nerves, and leads to patients experiencing these numbness, pain, tingling sensation in the hands and the feet. And some patients go on to describe this sensation as they have difficulty buttoning their shirts. They may have difficulty in fine motor skills like using the keyboard, or stitching, knitting, and whatever day-to-day activities for different age groups. And like I said, this problem persists several years, and it affects almost close to 1.5 to 2 million cancer patients globally, worldwide. And given that the top cancers are affecting a median working age group of younger people, the health economic cost presents as a huge burden in terms of patient work loss, and also it increases the cost for the patients affected by CIPN as compared to those not affected by this disorder. Currently, we would be surprised to know that there is no proven cure for this except for symptomatic treatment. And this means that the patients have to just go on to pop painkillers, which will subside their pain for a while, but again, it will appear once the effect of the medicine wears off. So essentially, there is no prevention, there is no cure, and it is only symptomatic treatment. So what goes on to eventually happen is, the physicians who treat these patients often have to make a very tough choice between continuing or discontinuing the chemotherapy itself, because if you continue, it may result in a lifelong burden of nerve damage and numbness and pain. Whereas if you discontinue owing to preventing the neuropathy, you end up not treating the cancer, and that causes increase in mortality and poorer survival outcomes as well. And as you see, this picture is indicative of a chemotherapy regimen called paclitaxel. and it is given either weekly or once in 3 weeks over almost 3 months. And as the doses go on, you can see that the neuropathy developing in the patients goes on to increase. And this is what I was indicating in terms of the physicians will either go on to reduce the dose of the chemotherapy so that the nerve damage can temporarily reduce, or they may go on for a dose delay of the chemotherapy itself, where they skip a week or 2 weeks and then continue with the chemotherapy. But all of this is going to result in compromised survival outcomes of the cancer itself. I was talking about scalp cooling a little while ago. And the idea behind scalp cooling is that when you cool a certain part of the body, it causes vasoconstriction. It is a phenomenon essentially meaning that it will cause the constriction of the blood vessels in the region which is being cooled. And what consequently happens is, due to the temporarily reduced blood vessel diameters, the amount of chemo which is exposed to the tissue which is being cooled is reduced. So that is how the concept of cryotherapy tackles prevention of chemotherapy-induced disorders. In the recent past, cryotherapy has emerged to being used in several other chemotherapy-induced side effects, such as oral ulcers, which also occur as a side effect of chemotherapy. And also it has been studied in chemo-induced neuropathy or nerve damage. And the concept is very similar. When you cool the areas affected, in this case, neuropathy affects the nerve endings. So the concept is to cool the hands and the legs of the cancer patients while they are undergoing their chemotherapy. And we envision that the local cooling caused by the local cryotherapy or the local cooling caused by the cryotherapy administered in the hands and the legs is going to cause local vasoconstriction, and that in turn will reduce the exposure of the chemotherapy to the nerve endings in the fingertips and the toe tips. And this concept has been shown to be promising in preventing chemotherapy-induced neuropathy. You can see here that there are certain few images which are indicative of frozen gloves or ice packets. And these are pretty much what are being used around the world to administer cryotherapy for cancer patients. And you can imagine how painful this is with, sorry, let me see if there's yeah. So you can imagine a patient who is already undergoing a lot of burden in terms of cancer care, and beyond that, expect them to be sitting there in the chemotherapy center with hands and legs tied with ice packs for 3 hours and for 12 weeks, which is the duration of the chemotherapy, which I was referring to, the paclitaxel chemotherapy. This is a sheer extra burden on the cancer patients, and many of them are willing to undergo this temporary pain to prevent the long-term numbness and pain from occurring. However, there is a huge problem here that this cryotherapy administered by means of frozen gloves or ice packs has, of course, no temperature control, and in some cases has shown to even cause frostbite. So this is what drove our group, a group of biomedical engineers and cancer doctors. We went on to think about, can we use a medical device to administer cooling in a regulated way, essentially thermoregulation? And can we identify parameters which can be optimally used for cancer patients, which doesn't cause them a lot of cold pain, but also sufficiently prevents the exposure of chemo to the nerve endings, which is our target, and reduces the side effect from occurring, but also enables a safe and tolerable intervention for the patients while they undergo the chemotherapy. And we went on to realize that currently, or in the past few years, when we started off with this study, there were no devices in the market which were catered for cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy to address this particular disorder. So this is an urgent clinical unmet need around the world, and there are a lot of patients who are going on to adopt these frozen gel packs and ice packs to cool themselves, and are in desperate need for a proper medical device which can administer this treatment for them. So we went on to think about how we can understand by using a medical device, a cooling device which is available in the market, to first demonstrate a proof of concept of this cryotherapy thermoregulator treatment over a long duration of time, which hasn't been studied so far. So we went on to use cooling devices, which are currently available for sports medicine, sports injury, and for patients recovery from surgical care. And this is a totally different indication, but the base concept of cryotherapy is the same. And we went on to use these devices. I'll talk about it a little more in detail in the next few slides, but an overview is that we went on to use these devices to do proof of concept studies, and from those derive inputs to develop our own technology, which is catered specifically for cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy. So the rest of the talk will talk about how this process was driven, and what are some of the takeaways which engineers working with other multidisciplinary stakeholders can adopt into their own research, technology, and tech development. Being engineers and technologists, we are very often guilty of being hyper-focused on our technology, that we often forget who the technology is being designed for. So we get on to features, efficiency, how the device is developed, how the technology is going to hit the market, and so on. And however, the end user is not often kept in mind while the technology is being developed, or while even the needs are being assessed. It is a good thing that the whole ecosystem, not only health tech, but also several other fields, are moving towards a user-centric approach. And in health tech, we refer to that as a patient-centric ecosystem. And this is an approach where we make the technology relevant to the user, in this case, the cancer patient. And this is very important because it enlightens to us the fact that how do we engage so many different stakeholders in our hyper multidisciplinary fields, which I think any technology we take in today's world has its footprint in several different fields and technologies, and we end up working with not only our own discipline, but across disciplines. And there are several complex challenges which are encountered throughout technology development, and in this case, especially medical device development, because it demands all these different researchers speaking different tech languages to collaborate together to address this clinical unmet need. And here's where design thinking and design science comes into play. Here you see is an overview of what we call the HUD packs design design thinking approach. And here it refers to our collaborators from the University of Huddersfield in the UK, and also Paxman Coolers, who are our industry partners, and they are also the global leaders in the scalp cooling industry. So as you can see, there are multiple players here. We have the National University of Singapore, the N1 Institute for Health, and this also started off from the Singapore Institute for Neurotechnology. So here come the biomedical engineers and the technologists, and we have the National University Hospital, who played one of the pioneering roles in this project. We had neurologists and oncologists from the hospital coming together, and we have industry leaders from Paxman Coolers coming together to bring in their expertise in translating medical technology from the research preclinical side into the market, commercializing it, and what we call as clinical translation to reach from the research bench to the patient bedside. And each of them, like I said, have a different priority. Each of them speak a different set of jargon and language. And this approach is very necessary to bring all of them together, achieve a sort of functional equilibrium, so to speak, and identify the distinct needs of the user, identify the inputs which need to go into the design development, and also keep in mind the regulatory, IP, and commercial feasibility sort of requirements which may come into play downstream further in the line when we are looking at clinical and commercial translation. So this design thinking approach has 4 different phases. I will not get into the nitty-gritties, but briefly speaking, they are discover, define, develop, and deliver. So the phase 1 looks at empathizing, coming together as a team, identifying what the user needs are, and essentially this design thinking approach can be adopted to any technology, agnostic of the field and industry. So you empathize, obtain user needs, do your user interviews, be there, present with the user using the technology, understand how they interact with the technology which you may be bringing in, and what are their current behavioral patterns, and so on. And then what you derive out of this is called design inputs. And then you translate that into design outputs, and you start developing a basic prototype, which can go on from alpha to beta to manufacturing ready prototype. And here comes a lot of iteration, where you go back to your users to do a focus group, and then you come back to your lab to do your refining your design process and prototyping. And finally, you deliver the product. And here's what you need to keep in mind, that all through this process, if you're looking at a commercializable technology, you want to slowly knit into the process all your regulatory requirements which are specific to your technology, and also look at continuous improvement, all the paperwork necessary for your regulatory and commercial translation, and so on, because these need to be taken into account throughout the process and not at the end when your technology is ready to be delivered. In the next few slides, I'll show you a snapshot of how we work together to achieve, or let's say, sail through the discover phase into the define phase. This is a zoom in picture of what I said was the current user practice. Like I was saying, patients undergoing chemotherapy are resorting to using frozen gel ice packs or just bags of ice, and these keep melting every few hours. So we went on to interact with cancer patients in the chemotherapy centers, both in Singapore and in the UK, to observe how the chemotherapy practice is carried out. And also we took feedback from current users and also from various publications as to how how the ice packs are being effective and what are the problems being caused by this. So we identified that frostbite is a huge problem, which is a strong need for thermoregulatable medical cooling device to be developed. And this drives to an evidence-based approach where we base our design inputs purely on the patient needs and user-centered design inputs. We then went on to adopt commercial medical devices, which, like I said, are currently in the market for needs of medical cooling, but for sports injury and surgical recovery. This is what it looks like. And we went on to do a proof of concept study using these devices in cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy. And a typical schedule of a patient undergoing this regimen would look like 12 weeks of chemotherapy and cooling along with each cycle of chemotherapy, which will last 3 hours. And we would follow them up at regular intervals to assess how their feeling of numbness or their feeling of touch and sense, what we call as sensory and motor nerve functions are. And this will be a reflection of if neuropathy is developing, and if it develops, to what extent has this cooling been useful to preventing or not. So we went on to assess the use of just cooling, and we saw that the patients could not, rather, I would say we went on to test in healthy volunteers first, because we want to establish safety before we go on to cancer patients. And in healthy volunteers, we found that even 22 degrees Celsius, we would think that that is a very rather high temperature, was not tolerable for the duration of 3 hours. And this is because of, could be various reasons. You're cooling a large portion of the body with close contact and for an extended duration of time. But our concern was that scalp cooling cools at almost close to 4 to 0 degrees Celsius. When patients are able to take that sort of cold tolerance, what can we do to improve the cold tolerance, but also delivering better cold to them for the duration to help prevent this disorder? So then, looking at other applications, we came to the idea and juncture that adding compression may introduce a factor of cold tolerance into this paradigm. So then we went on to look at how cryocompression, which is the aspect of both cooling and pressure together, applied on to our healthy volunteers first and then on to cancer patients. And in the healthy volunteer study, we observed that just by adding a layer of pressure, volunteers could handle or tolerate cooling for 3 hours at almost 10 degrees lesser. And this was really amazing. This would mean that we could go on to deliver cryotherapy to cancer patients at much lower temperatures, which would improve their chances of preventing CIPN due to increased vasoconstriction, like I was mentioning, but also make them take the cryotherapy in a comfortable manner for their 3 hours and multiple weeks of chemotherapy. We went on to prove this in obtain this proof of concept, safety, tolerability, and optimal parameters of administering this therapy in a few hundred cycles of chemotherapy in several patients in Singapore. And here you can see are some thermal images of the hands of the healthy volunteers after they have undergone cryotherapy by different means. This is the ambient temperature. The aircon in Singapore is slightly high, so you can see that there is some amount of cooling already. And with just cooling, there is a slight drop in temperature. And like I said, when we add that layer of pressure, there is almost a 10-degree drop in temperature and with similar tolerability, and much translated as much better cooling in the extremities at the end of the 3 hours. And this is very comparable to the frozen gloves or ice packs, which are currently being used. So using these inputs derived from studies by our engineering team and the clinical team at the National University Hospital, we went on to bring these as what we call design inputs to our industry partner and design team, who translated them into sketches and also basic prototypes using low-cost materials, and also some basic functional prototypes to show how operational the model is. And we went on to derive several precious design inputs from our initial studies. Like I said, the devices which we used in the clinic were not catered for cancer patients. So when we were using them in our first proof of concept studies, there were a lot of difficulties in terms of the cancer patients would have their chemotherapy needle put on their either their wrist or the forearm, and this means that the wrap cannot wrap around that part of the arm. So one of our design features was to include what we call as windows to allow the nurses to put in the needle, but also monitor the area around the needle for any extravasation or leakage of chemotherapy, which is another hazard to watch out for, and while the rest of the arm can continue to be cooled. So after we developed an initial prototype, we went on to conduct user-centered focus groups in the UK and Singapore. And this focus group would consist of healthcare professionals, which would include nurses, doctors. We also had some patient representatives who are very important to give us feedback as to what are the usability engineering features which need to be taken care of at this point of time in the medical device development process. This is an artist sketch of our prototype, and in this user-centered study group, we received a lot of feedback on our prototype, and if any of you are interested in the process so far, you can also take a look at our publication, which describes this part of the medical device development. And there are also a couple of other publications which refer to our proof of concept studies, which was carried out using both cryocompression and also purely just cooling, which we called as continuous flow cooling. After the user-centered study group, we then went on to improve the prototype and then continue to conduct safety and efficacy studies of the developed bespoke medical cooling device, which we developed for cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy. And this is a clinicaltrials.gov registered clinical trial, which is currently in progress. And we have several cancer patients who are undergoing the concomitant cryocompression and chemotherapy currently in the chemo center at the National University Hospital at Singapore. And we are looking at some very good results in terms of how safe the device is, how tolerable the optimal temperature and pressure which we obtained from our proof of concept studies are, and how usable the device is in terms of catering it specifically for the user needs, in this case, the chemo receiving cancer patient, and so on. We are yet to go on to the stage of assessing their development of neuropathy, but that will be over the period of the next year. So, so far has been a very research-oriented presentation. In the next couple of slides, I would like to address this to the up-and-coming young scientists, researchers, technologists, entrepreneurs who are brimming with passion to develop life-saving technologies and technologies which can revolutionize how we approach life and health tech. So I would like to share some lessons from what I call a team science project. So here is where I put together my learnings from my journey of a decade working in multidisciplinary biomedical engineering, medtech and health tech projects. And take it with a pinch of salt, but these are just my views, and take what is relevant to you and apply it in a way which is relevant to your own journey. So I start with having a shared vision, and this is very critical in any team which is interdisciplinary. You start with a common program, identifying the common problem which you want to solve, sit together with the team and address why you are doing what you're doing. You may even go back to the basics to discuss what is the value addition in this collaboration. Can I just do it as a team on my own? Do I need other collaborators to come in with their expertise? And if so, what role does each of them play? And what is that common critical problem which we need to solve together? Chart out pivotal aligned goals for the team to jointly frame problem statements. And also, it is very important, I think, to set core focus and also break down the silos, which happens when each discipline, like engineers work with engineers more comfortably, and designers will work with designers. So you want to come together and break those silos. And then you go on to think globally. And when I say globally, I mean in terms of globally as a technology team. So we often get buried in the tiny details. So from time to time, it helps to zoom out and take a look at the bigger picture. And here is where you identify the diversities and commonalities across the different sectors trying to solve a problem together. And for the students and young researchers who are watching this talk, while you're trying to write a research paper or while you're trying to tackle a business proposal or presentation, it is very, very important to tailor it to your target audience in terms of their interests and their language. We often tend to focus on how I am going to present it as an engineer, but if you are presenting to an investor, you want to drive home the point of how investable is your project or how commercially translatable your technology is. Be curious about how different disciplines work, how they view and value different things and aspects. And this is something you can all nurture in general during your student life. And in my graduate research, I was very fortunate to be in an environment which would constantly encourage multidisciplinary encounters. And I always enjoyed going on to talk to my colleagues and peers in different departments and research projects, and listen to what are the problems which they encountered in their experiments, and how would they solve this. And you'll be very surprised to experience such things, because somebody else's experience may plant a seed in your head to creatively tackle your problem, your unmet need in a very different way. And this is where you find solutions, and this is where your multidisciplinary inspirations to your problems come from different fields. When you're working with a team, listen. Communication is key to winning a collaboration, and actively listen and respect each other's views and expertise. And this is very, very important. And this brings me to another important aspect, is to go on to have an open or what is called a growth mindset. And such a growth mindset is important to go on to work together, bringing in different technological or different disciplines together to realize this shared goal. And here it is important to unlearn and relearn what may be required to be open to new perspectives. Learn the language. Again, I don't mean different international languages, but I speak about the technical jargon here. All of us, when we get together, are very comfortable in speaking our own technical language, and jargon flows through. But the same word can mean different things in different perspectives to different people. For example, in my field of research, preclinical may refer to experimental bench work, which is like cell culture work or animal work. But when I work with designers, preclinical means the device development, prototyping sort of work which they perform. Another stark work example is how the word cell can mean different things to an electrical engineer versus a biologist. So it can be a little frustrating when you're trying to achieve a common goal with people speaking different technical jargon. But this is where asking specific questions and clarifying what each team member stakeholder means and explicitly defining what you're trying to convey will help to push forward your research. And embrace discomfort. Again, this ties into asking questions, stepping out of your comfort zone, especially as a young professional. This is something we want to get used to, embracing discomfort, embracing failures, and attempting something which you're not used to. And that is where your aspect of growth lies. And when the tables are turned, when you're mentoring somebody, be tolerant, be patient, be empathetic for them to bridge to your level of expertise. And another key thing to keep in mind when you're getting into a new field is we may tend to feel that we are more knowledgeable than we actually are. So we should stay grounded and take a reality check on unconvincing ideas before pitching them. The last 2 points are, again, long-term and very important to nurture, building a relationship. Like I said, team science is a process. It is not a project. And it takes a long time to nurture and build a strong collaborative teams. Along the way, make friends, get to know each other, understand how they work, understand the strengths and weaknesses of the team, and what brings out the best in your team. And this is important when you transition from a student to a young professional, be it in translating technology, project management, leading a team, and essentially anywhere. And finally, don't only play by the rules. Leave it a little bit to serendipity. And I should say that some of the greatest discoveries have come across serendipitously. Establish a synergistic collaboration with your team and let that do the magic. And with that, being a proud IEEE member, which I may share with a lot of the audience today, I'm very glad that there is a lot of effort from this community going on to creating collective impact, advancing technology for the benefit of humanity as our vision and mission calls for. And I think approaches to research and technology like these only further that cause. And definitely do reach out, especially for those who are physically present, an excellent chance to network, get to know people outside your own groups, strike a conversation, be interested in what the other person is doing, and you never know that you may end up with a brand new collaboration leading to some very impactful outputs in the future. And with that, I end my talk. These are my contact details. Very happy to connect. Please do feel free to reach out to me with any comments, questions, and share what you do. Thank you for the opportunity, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. And kindly accept the e-note as a token of gratitude.
This is lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aishwarya, madam, for your wonderful presentation and sharing your thoughts today with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Brinda.
We will meet with some other program, ma'am, in future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Such a pleasure.
Whenever you visit Chennai, kindly visit our college.
Absolutely, ma'am.
We
I
will
think
make one more session, the in-person session.
would
Okay.
certainly
For,
love to be
For
back in the
Sairam
Sairam
students,
class.
again, you can give one more talk.
Certainly would love to meet you all in person.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aishwarya. Bye.
Video for the next session.
Hello, sir. அதாவது IEEE ப்ரோக்ராம் நடந்ததெல்லாம் இருக்குது 6 மாசம் அட்டகாசம் பண்ணிட்டு இருந்தோம். சரி, நாங்க தான் அடிக்கடி யூடியூப் லைவ் தானே போட்டுட்டே இருப்போம். அது அவருக்கு தெரியும், சொன்னாலும் உனக்கு எஜுகேட் பண்றாராம். என்னையும் சொன்னாரு, இங்க பிறகு செக் பண்ணிட்டு தான் போகணும் வீட்டுக்கு. நான் சொன்னேன், நாளைக்கு காலை 8 மணிக்கு நான் வந்து பண்ணிக்கிறேன். இல்ல நான் 8 மணிக்கு நாளைக்கு வந்து பண்ணிக்கிறேன், நான் பாத்துக்கிறேன் சார் அப்படின்னா. இப்போ வந்து பண்ணிட்டு வீட்டுக்கு போனா ஏன் அவ்வளவு நம்பிக்கை இல்லையான்ட்டு நான் என்ன சொல்றேன், நான் நாளைக்கு காலை வந்து பாத்துக்கிறேன் சார் அப்படின்ட்டு. அப்புறம் தான் விட்டாரு அவரு. இல்லைன்னா அவர் விடவே மாட்டேன்னாரு. சொல்லு பஞ்சு. ஓகே ஓகே, பாத்துக்கிறேன்.
Hi, this is Subodh.
Hello, sir. Welcome. Welcome to Sairam Engineering College.
Hello. Namaskara to all of you.
Oh.
Sorry, I was facing issues because WebEx and Zoom were working simultaneously, so I had to shut down a few processes. My apologies for the few minutes delay.
Okay, sir. No issues, sir. Now it's okay, sir. Your link
Yeah,
is
it's-
okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just shut down everything else. So Zoom is working fine. Apparently, it does not like any other communication software running. So I've just disabled everything else like Teams, WebEx. It's now only Zoom working. And yeah, I can see a lively and a bright audience.
Actually,
behind
Zoom
me.
is a very good platform, sir, compared to Teams and WebEx. Actually, we are
Yeah.
very comfortable with this
Very
platform.
good. Very
Yes,
good.
yes,
Very
yes.
good. And again, a good morning. I can see a very lively and a bright audience behind you there for the
Yes,
ICT.
yes, sir. Nearly 200 students are sitting in the auditorium for you
Awesome.
to listen your
Awesome.
talk. Yes, yes, sir. This is
is-
our college auditorium. Yeah.
Okay.
Our third year students and participants are available here.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I believe this is your Hosur campus or your Tambaram campus?
Yeah. Our Tambaram campus, Sairam.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, shall we start, sir?
Yeah, I'm ready. I have my
Yeah.
few slides if it's okay, but
Yeah,
let me know when you want me to
Formal
begin.
introduction. Formal introduction. 1 minute,
Yeah.
sir.
Or
Yeah.
we can skip that. I'm perfectly okay. We can straight away begin. Yeah.
No. Yeah, start.
What you get by achieving your goals is not important as what you become by achieving your goals. I welcome Mr. Subodh Gajare, Principal Architect. He contributes as Senior Architect for incubating Cisco AI, 5G, and IoT industry solutions in digital manufacturing, smart cities, healthcare, education, energy, and transportation. He actively moonlights as a research mentor for Cisco Startup Program and contributes by incubating 5 startups every year. He is an active contributor to numerous B schools and engineering schools within India for shaping their curriculum, conduct FDP workshops, hackathons to align to industry needs. May I request Mr. Subodh Gajare to share about the topic Massive IoT Acceleration with 5G. Please, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, madam. Do I have the sharing rights to start my presentation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can.
Okay, wonderful. Let me know once the title slide comes up. Maybe a thumbs up. Is it visible for everyone?
Yes, sir. Coming. It's available.
Okay. All right. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I believe this event is getting streamed as well. So as the madam introduced, we are really going to talk with an industry lens, right, or a perspective around these two mega trends, which are practically shaping everything around us, right? All of your students behind madam here, behind Brinda ma'am, and I'm sure there's one thing which you all carry, right, apart from your brains and your bodies. And if you're looking closely at my camera, this is what you're carrying now. Okay, some of you at least. Hopefully, it's not turned on, so you're multiplexing, and you shouldn't. All right. So what we're really going to cover landscape, and it's in all my honesty, I think we have 45 minutes, Brinda ma'am, for the talk.
Hello, sir.
Is it 45 minutes or is it 30 minutes?
You can extend beyond that also, sir. No issues.
Okay. So I would love to have questions in between, but these are the three broad industry areas I'll talk. But the last one is the most special for me. Brinda ma'am tells me all of you have great ideas and questions. And for me, that is the first place where innovation happens. For my company, Cisco, that's where we encourage engineers to ask questions, go really beyond their comfort zones. So as you hear more things, make notes, ask your questions, interrupt me at any time. You can just raise your hand there and I can request one of you ma'ams to just pause me anytime, right? I don't want this really to be a monologue. I really request you, if you can ask questions in between, that is great. But having said that, we'll make sure we'll keep at least 7 to 10 minutes at the end for questions, okay?
Yes,
That's
sir.
my
End of
promise.
the session we can have, sir, because the system will not allow to ask question each and everyone then and there. Because only one mic we can use within the auditorium. That's the issue.
Oh, understand.
Yeah,
Oh, no
we are in
problem,
the
sir.
hybrid mode. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay,
Hopefully
okay.
one day we get to do this live, right? Maybe after May or June, after your exams, we should do this live as well. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We will do it, sir.
All right. So certain assumptions, all of you may be in different branches, streams of engineering. It's been over 2 decades since I did my engineering. But you may have some certain clues about, obviously, software, the software platforms, any one of them. It doesn't matter whether it's JSON, Ansible, Mongo, Python, doesn't matter. You have some inclination about telecommunications, cloud, mobility, and apps. But even if you don't, and this could potentially be your first introduction to AI/ML, IoT solutions, 5G, enterprise blockchains, sit back, enjoy the ride, right? Just imagine you're watching a trailer into what's happening in the industry. That's perfectly okay. My real request to you, and if you're reading this, is engage, really engage actively. Because these are industry trends, they might look simple. For example, IoT could be like, oh, it's just a 7-year-old technology, but it's not. It's evolved from so many things, especially from the old industrial IoT world, right? So these are industry trends which I'm trying to make very short, meaningful capsules. I would like you to ask questions because these are disruptive industry trends, and I'll give you some examples. So if you ask questions and query boldly, my friends, that is the first place you'll be breaking your boundaries. And this will also be the fuel for you to take that idea in a group of 3, 4, or 10 and really take it to the next level. It could be a way in which you benefit your college, your institution, you do certain things inside your college, you fuel your startup, you file that paper, submit it to IEEE, get it approved by reviewers, present at summits, file that patent if it gets patentable. Immense opportunities open up, right? And that's why it's all about you. But first and foremost, why should you, as especially if I may take the liberty, and this is not meant for all the professors, sir and madam in the room. This is really about students now, okay? Because I know the professors are across this, but why should the students really? Why should you worry about this Internet of Things, whatever this mega trend is, okay? So there was a survey done. This was around 2020, just after COVID had set in the first wave. The target group, if you can see on the footer below, it was 14 to 29. Now I can say with a fair degree of pride, I don't belong in that category. And I don't think most of your professors and madams also belong to that category. So this is about you. So 5,000 students in each country, so roughly 500,000 students across the world, almost 5 lakh, were given this survey. And there was a simple question and 4 or 5 alternatives were given. I cannot imagine a life without. And 43% of you, so actually almost 2 lakh of you said, I cannot imagine my life or a life without my current partner. Okay, so don't start guessing what's happening behind the red umbrella. That's not the question. Okay, the question is having a life partner was important, whether it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, or somebody in your life. Okay, 64% of you chose a car. I tried to put some object there. Okay, so it's a car. I know it looks very old, like 25 years old, but 64% of you actually felt my life is incomplete without a car. Hold your breath. 84% of you felt, almost 4 lakh of you out of 5 lakh felt, I cannot imagine a life without the internet, whichever way you access. Okay, and this was huge. And I thought it's a great survey. It tells me how important internet is in the context of social, the political, everything. And I said, oh, this looks great. I was expecting actually the internet to be a bit more till I saw the 4th option. Any guesses? Yep. Yeah, almost 99% of you. So almost 99% of you said your mobile phone matters more. Okay. So we're talking about centralization, decentralization. If you look at all of this, right, your phone is a centralized place where you now connect to the world. Your computers in a lab, your computers in a home could be the decentralized way where you connect to the internet. But now phone becomes a centralized way because it does everything. It computes, it stores, it has an IO system, it has a memory. And this was shocking. So I took the liberty of just pasting all the 6 or 7 generations of phone I don't even know the first 3 or 4 generations, but apparently maybe 15 to 16 years ago, we just had the standard Nokia or the Samsung headset, which was a 3G. And then we had the Palm Pilots. And then from 2006, since Apple launched the iPhone, there's no looking back. The smartphone revolution has happened. Okay, so hold your thoughts on that. And now imagine this object. And then look at the evolution of the internet too. And if on the x-axis, you plot intelligent connections, and the y-axis, if you say business and societal impact. Societal means how it impacts your daily life, okay? So the first age of internet was all about connectivity. The second was networked economy. So a little bit of IBM's, the PayPal's, yes, PayPal was there then too, Elon Musk's first venture, okay? And we had e-commerce, we had digital supply chains, a little bit of, basic chat emails. From 2008 to 2000, I would say 16, 8 to 9 years. It was all about social media, a little bit of social media. The Twitters came in, the Facebook came in, cloud came in, immersive experiences started happening, video conferencing, distance learning happened. And from 2016 onwards, this new thing has come. And we call this as the fourth wave of the internet, or for lack of a better word, Industry 4.0. And that is not just about you getting internet. It's really about a way in which people process data and things. They all connect. I'll say this again. You have a college. College has students, professors, faculty, supporting staff. You have Wi-Fi. Maybe you have 500 Mbps of Wi-Fi on a campus, Sairam campus. Then you have processes. You have various processes, the admission processes, the library processes. You have the transcript processes, the faculty training processes, the student admission processes. Everything goes through that. Now, when you really have IT and IoT enabling all of that, it becomes the Internet of Things. In fact, it becomes the Internet of massive things. And people in industry have been using this word for the last 6 years, so I'll use it here, digitization, okay? Or you can say digital manufacturing for factories, or sustainable smart cities. I personally think as students, you should not just think about enabling connectivity for cities, but also solving societal problems, right? So water, electricity, gas, citizen services like PAN, Aadhaar, passport. So when you do all that, the cities become not only smart, but also sustainable. Similarly, healthcare, we all saw in the last 20 months, just having smart wearables makes so much difference, right? So various things, agri-tech, one big, huge thing, especially for our country, right? Which still is largely driven, and rightfully so, because we produce our own food. 45% of our economy has agriculture as a growth sector. So if you just imagine this graph and now imagine the internet, it would be nice, right? So this was actually meant to be a quiz question, but because you cannot speak, I'll probably say it out loud. So I'll show this again. So if you look at this, that's a laptop, right? So the question is, what does the 1 person indicate here? If the slide now goes and changes to this, okay? So I'll say this again. If you really look at it, right, our traditional thing about computing has always been it should have a screen, a mouse, windows, icons, keyboard, memory, I/O, solid storage, or any kind of hard disk storage, right? And they will naturally be connected because they either have a LAN connection or a wireless connection, right? For example, your phone has 3 wireless connections, right? You may not realize, but you actually have 3 wireless radios. The first radio is for mobile 4G or 5G. The second is for Bluetooth, and the third is for Wi-Fi. So that's 3 radios. Similarly, your laptop will always have at least, if not, all of this, but at least 2 radios, one maybe 100 gig, 100 meg, or 1 gig LAN connection. So if you count about these things, that's only 1 person. The real thing of IoT is connecting the rest of the 99%. And by that, I mean, look at the cheapest and the most longest and the most important way in which goods are transferred to the world. Your top right? Containers probably, the size of your football field, carrying everything, from your bikes, your cars, your food grains, your cloth, every damn thing which a country needs comes through the 7 seas, and that is still the cheapest mode. It might take 20 days for a container to reach from, say, US Suez Canal all the way to here. It's still the cheapest mode, because if you take the cost of putting all of that payload, maybe 5,000, 6,000 tons of goods on a plane, you're going to have so much cost. No doubt you'll get in 16 hours, but it's not worth it. So cheapest mode. Look at airports. Again, similarly, air traffic controllers, windmills, shopping malls. Our gadgets will be there, and we mistakenly think that is IoT. It is not actually. So IoT is really connecting the unconnected, which never had a controller, which never had anyone. So what do? So that medium which makes this unconnected things connect to the world is a sensor. So let's now start really looking at how did we get here. So if you really imagine the evolution of internet, it's like human beings have evolved, right? So the green scale is how human beings have evolved. We all know we evolved from mollusk or sea anemones. And if you plot that scale with the intelligence of the internet, so we went from, right now we are at 50 plus billion devices, like an elephant. The real evolution will be in the next 8 to 10 years, when we are really going to touch 1 trillion. So 1,000 billion, 10 to the power of 18 number of machine-to-machine connections. We all think smartphone is the fastest growing segment. It is not. Machine-to-machine connections every day cross 4.5 times more than the number of dedicated cell phone connections in the world. So machine-to-machine, I mean. So anything which is not connected but is now getting connected to something or sharing some data, M2M is what we call it. And why it's happening? Yeah, you all know the forces, so I'll not even say the names loud. You can quickly make a note, but data, we all knew there, data is no longer in, terabytes or petabytes anymore. The internet has embraced the zettabyte era, okay? So we're talking about 1,000 terabytes, which is petabyte, and 1,000 petabytes really becomes exabytes, and 1,000 exabytes becomes a zettabyte. We're really even going beyond the zettabytes now. When we cross, say, 800 zettabytes, we would probably touch something like a yottabyte, right? So big data is there, the volume, the velocity, everything is there. What many people miss out in big data is the third V, which is the veracity. And in industry, we like to look at veracity or the truthfulness of data. Why is it important to have a smartwatch? Because the sensor tracks your movement, and you get some true or good data, veracity, which you can make certain guesses or insights about. Similarly, cloud, right? Whether it's platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, or software as a service. 6 years ago, if I told you, please go and book your bus ticket, say from Chennai to Bangalore, or Chennai to Bombay or Mumbai, or book your flight ticket, you would have to go to dedicated airline sites. Now, I'm sure 9 out of 10 of you folks will simply show me this and say, so we'll just go to Make My Trip, or you put a filter and say, when is the cheapest cost coming down to 2,000 rupees, and you put a marker, and you're good to go. So software as a service, right? There are airline companies, the goods or the service providers. On top of that, there are communication platforms. On top of that, there are app providers, okay? So AIML coming in a big way. It's not just chatbots. You try to open a bank or a loan account, you go to SBI's site, you go to ICICI Bank site or HDFC, all of them are Cisco customers. We help them build chatbots or video bots. So you have someone just talking to you at the top 10 questions. Do you have a PAN card? Do you have any other banking account? Do you have the last 6 month statement? Yes, 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 all checks done. No need to visit a bank, no photocopies, nothing. Just right before your device, which can take the best picture, the true picture that can be digitized. And if it fits the requirements, your account gets open probably in less than 12 minutes in the confines of your home. And that's what all these banks did in COVID times. That's what they're doing now for life policies, right? So all of these things work together. I'm just giving you the context. It's not just that. And here's the financial reason. So there's always a political, the commercial reason, the social reason, the legal reason, the environmental reason. We're just touching all of this, right? So the commercial or the real financial reason is it's no longer whether I can, right from I think everywhere, even Donald Trump said, right? So things like IoT and 5G are no longer just technical advantages. They're actually economic or social advantages. If you do this right, if you have the right sensors at the right place, in the right soil, you can have the best crop rotation. You can have drones sprinkling water only where it is required. You would not be wasting water, and you would be turning off the taps when not required. Similarly, no losses in transmission for electricity, gas, water. So the economic advantages is like manifold, right? That's like almost 6 times our economy right now. So countries, cities, corporations, everyone is in it, right? There are various initiatives by every company, right from IBM, Cisco, Google, Amazon. Everyone is involved in this. The governments are involved in this. It's high time as students, you also start leveraging the advantage. All right. This was again a quiz question. I've kept many questions in this slide just to interest you all, but I know we cannot interact, but I'll give out the answer to you. My question was, who is this person, right? So his name is there. His name is Dr. Klaus Schwab in Austria and Germany. The SCH is very hard. So it's Klaus Schwab. And who is he really? So if you Google, he's a founding chairman of the World Economic Forum, right? Which meet every year. So they just met 2 months ago in the second week of January. They will all meet. The most preferred location is somewhere in Switzerland or in Davos, and they will decide, right, strategically. So he's founded the World Economic Forum, and they all meet. So from our side, you'll have prime ministers, the business tycoons, the political leaders, the social leaders, all of them go there. And 5 years ago, so exactly probably around, I think it was 2017 actually. So 4 years ago, he made a statement, and he said, "We are turning a world of data to a data-driven world." I'll say this again. He said, "We are turning a world of data into a data-driven world." It's very apparent. It's very simple. But why did he say that? And he said, there are 3 main industrial revolutions we happened. We all know the James Watt 1806 steam engine. Then came electricity, right, over grid lines. So which means when the steam engine came, it enabled the humankind to do something which they were never doing, which was the locomobility, as we call it, right, moving around from here to there. Then came electricity, mass production in a way, right? So we had people using electricity. Then came the internet. It's enabling everything. And now he says we are actually on the cusp of this Internet of Things. And he calls that as the 4th industrial revolution. So it is not an IT thing anymore. In fact, it is 99% more than just an IT thing. It looks like it has IT, but that big O in between. In fact, I would say it is I would even love to call it Internet of Everything. It is so important, my friends, because it shapes every industry: education, healthcare, retail, shopping. Look around you. It has always been there in silos, but now suddenly, with the power of sensors, with the power of software-defined networking, with the power of, I would say, open RESTful APIs and controllers, and obviously mobility with 5G. And that's what this talk is all about. Okay. So IoT is driving business transformation. If you really look at it, from human scale to machine scale, it was very apparent, right? Till almost early 2018, machines were doing all this chunk. But now IoT now promises where we are entering the world of decision data-driven making. So big data, IoT, 5G, all with a machine learning or AI, ML frameworks. So whether it is TensorFlow, right, or Caffe2, or anything, you could think of anything, right, or the Rasta framework. So all of them are now driven frameworks. So when you look at this, mobility or bring your own device is now a normal thing. I'm sure you'll all laugh out loud, but if I tell you that 20 years ago, I was not allowed to bring my device to my college. I was not allowed to bring my device to my work. When I passed out and got into my first job in Procter & Gamble, all I carried was a file, pen, and my notebook. Now, when you join your jobs, all of you, you'll probably carry your phones, your tablet, your phablet, who knows, maybe even a Linux server by then. And you would just go and say, I don't need your IP address. I can just use the open source firmware. So it's all happening. We are all now embracing this world. Okay. So software and AI are really not just quadrupling. I think the right way, if you just understand math, is the word exponential. So for the first 5 or 6 steps, a linear equation and an exponential equation looks the same. So X and Y axis, if you draw a linear graph, and if you draw an exponential graph. So exponential will just look flat, and then suddenly it will go up. So for one increment in X, the Y just goes, and we humorously call it, for one increment in X, Y goes 1 lakh times. That is what exponential looks like, okay? Or you can call it iteration if you like, in mathematical terms. So this was a task, in 2018, I believe, right? So imagine all of you engineers, right? Imagine, hey, I'm like a Google product manager. I own Google Maps, okay? So me and Brinda ma'am, we have a problem now. There's this country called France. We haven't put this in Google Maps. I mean, we have the cartography and these things, but we don't have the exact thing, assuming, right? So in early 2018, this was practically a problem statement. How do I map every location of every business, household, and street number in France? Okay. And you were all Google engineers, and you said yeah, we have the standard answers. We'll set the special cars which have the LiDAR cameras. That's what we do. And we'll, do that. And considering the size of France, which is like, I would say, just a little bit over Chennai. And yeah, I think we should do this in probably 3.5 to 4 months. All the data reconciliation, big data, pictures, and all that. Till one of you, right? So it could be that one of you. I'm just saying, by one of you, I mean all of you, maybe all of you guys. One person of you said, "Hey guys, hold on. We are Google, right? We wrote Android. We own pictures practically of every Android phone put anywhere on the cloud, right? So for all of you who you don't know, every picture you take on an Android phone, you're signing a terms and conditions. So Google has the rights to use that at a public location. So they wrote a machine crawler algorithm for the last 25 years. For every picture put from every street, anywhere, any tourist, every human being who's gone to France and taken a selfie. And that is people like you and me, right? We go to the Eiffel Tower, we go to Champs-Élysées, we go to Triumph Park, we take a selfie, put a picture, if it's on Google Cloud, if it's on your Pixel phone. And they said, we can write a machine learning algorithm and say, next to this picture, find 10 pictures and make an algorithm. So that way the picture gets bigger. Thinking about this idea took them 1 day. Writing the code and doing the exercise took them 1 hour. That's how it's happened. Okay, so that's Champs-Élysées, the street, which is the main street, the tourist attraction street, like, the Marina Beach Street you have there, or the MG Road Street here in Bangalore. And that's how it took. That's really how long it took to digitally cartograph a city. And that's why I say that, we are really embracing the world of everything, your campuses, my office, infrastructure around us. Everything is really embracing what we call as the smart infrastructure. And everything is connected. Those yellow dots there signify why it's all connected and why you should all be concerned about it. At the same time, please realize your devices are forming an army also, right? I just wanted to insert the security construct, and it is not cyber security about computers and protocols. This is IoT security. This is some very serious thing which can happen. The cameras at the entrance of your colleges are on a wireless network. That WLAN can be compromised, which can be linked to your office network, your campus office network, and can be compromised if they are not on secure VPN tunnels. And these are the incidences which has happened, the Mirai botnet attack, the Dyn DNS providers, and so many. These are just the official ones. There's one happening every week now, and nobody wants to take notice of it, right? And that's why this has now become a top concern for everyone. The Yahoo breach. I'm not even going to waste my time talking about a top left corner. We all know the havoc that person is creating in the world. But everyone, universities are being hacked, countries are being compromised, Yahoo data breaches, everything's going on. So please realize it's a big thing. But changing tracks a bit. what's really data in IoT, right? So a nice way to imagine is, it's just like saying, I have 10,000 books. Great, you have 10,000 books about a technology you want to study. That's the data you have. And pretty much that is useless if you don't read and develop your insights, right? So if you read, say, 1,000 books on IoT, 1,000 books on software-defined networking, 1,000 books on AI/ML frameworks, 1,000 books on coding, now what insights can you have? Now that is priceless. And I would actually go and say your context is everything. So context is, now that you have the insights, what can you now develop? What can you now do for the farmers in Kerala, right? For the farmers, say, in West Tamil Nadu, or everywhere actually in Tamil Nadu, right? Can you take upon something for the solar panels so that they are not dependent on the erratic supply they get, which is pretty much in the middle of the night, for their watering pumps, for their fields? Anything. A lot of this is still being developed in silos. When you have a cohesive open source strategy for it, it becomes very nice. So think about it. Right now, all the things and apps are distributed, right? A car is running, a robotic arm exists, there are little clouds, the apps exist on the clouds. You book your PAN, passport, Aadhaar card, some of it is on the cloud. So there is this hybrid cloud, as we call it, right? So public-private hybrid. Public clouds, Amazon, let's say 10 of you folks tomorrow want to do some project. You don't want to invest in a server, you don't want to invest in software, go to the public cloud provider. Go to AWS, say you want to lease them for 2 or 3 months, get whatever you want. You want applications, you want payment gateways, everything is there, right? If you're starting a startup, you don't need furniture, you just need people thinking, and you need your credit card to subscribe to Amazon or Cisco or Microsoft Azure, okay? So that's public clouds. And then there are private clouds, right? For example, Reliance could have the private cloud, Airtel could have the private cloud, companies could have the private cloud, manufacturing guys could have the private cloud. And they're all talking and doing things. So the challenge in the current data model is, how do you connect all this? And most important, Sairam's data in Tambaram campus, is it relevant to Sairam College's data in some other campus in, say, Bangalore or Vellore or Bhopal or Indore or all the way north, Jharkhand, if you have a branch there, right? There is no programmatic way to move data at the right time. There's a lot of concerns about security, okay? So while the network exists, we are all connected by the only protocol in the world of the internet, which is TCP/IP version 4 and 6, both. What you need is really an IoT data fabric, okay? So think about this stack. So you have devices, and then you have an IP network. Please remember, IoT devices were unconnected devices. So it's like if we all go to Africa and we don't understand Zambian or Swahili language, how are we going to survive? So if all of us, are just assuming all of us right now on this call, so IoT devices do not talk TCP/IP. So there has to be a gateway function, a software function. The PLC in a factory, right? A controller or the huge utility grids, they all talk their own legacy language. Profinet, Modbus, Zigbee, BACnet, HART. I'm just using all these protocols. They have been existing for almost 90 odd years, almost a century old, okay? So if they're not talking, we first need a conversion, right? That's where a gateway or a router comes in. And that's when the IoT devices, and then you put a sensor. So if there's a rotating turbine, let's say in a Boeing factory, you put an intelligent sensor. And if the Boeing turbine is supposed to rotate at 320 revolutions per minute, the sensor calibrates that. When it goes below 280, that's a low threshold alarm. When it goes to 360, it's upper threshold alarm. And that's all the sensor has to do. In simple C++ logic, if ampersand RPM less than 320, then trigger this condition. Else, do this. Alternately, do this. It's a simple if this, then that condition, okay? And that's all there is to it in IoT programming. It's so simple. I would highly encourage all of you folks, there are open IoT SDKs. You're welcome to visit our developer site, developer.cisco.com. But even if you go to something like Intel's Galileo site or Arduino boards, you can start with simple Raspberry Pi boards, look at them, just have a Bluetooth or a wireless interface, achieve some connections. But you'll be touching some parts of the stack. Surely you will be. Okay. Now, just putting the official software stack. You have things, you have applications. That is the whole reality of the world, right? So even for a business, even if you're a stockbroker, okay, your goal is to have 6 apps for people to trade, transfer money, buy and sell stocks, have some accounting statements, and have a customer support app. Let's say 6 apps, 5 or 6 apps. How do people access your service? Do you think 10,000 people every day walk to your broker office? And your office could be, let's say, one office could be in Tidal Park, one office could be in Bangalore, one office could be in Gindi or somewhere. Nope. You put a portal. Then you write an app. Things. Okay. Everyone uses that. That's how Kuber happens. That's how Quoted Bank happens. Okay. So in between is what you do. In between is what you write. The blue and the orange layers is where that main IT crux is. So I wanted you to understand that and align your careers and your research also for that. I will leave you with this, my friends. Open and programmable APIs, they are so goddamn important. When I say open programmable APIs, I simply mean this. So let me give an example. So this is my little hard drive, or you could say something, right, which holds my earphones, and it's a little SSD hard drive. The only interface I need to bother is USB. Anywhere in the world I go, I can just plug this in and transfer my data. So plug and play, USB. You just have to not worry which device you're operating, what speed that device does. If you have a USB interface, you are connected. So RESTful APIs simply do that. So whatever you develop, it has to be using APIs, which means you open it up for people to collect and connect. Okay. And the biggest example, in case you're wondering, of RESTful API is, I know you guessed it, it's HTTP. You do a simple push-pull connection, right? You type Sairam college of engineering.com, for example, and it just launches a page. It pulls some data. It allows you to upload a form. So it's a simple create, update, delete function on HTTP. There's a simple push-pull mechanism. We also call it subscriber mechanism. And that's how HTTP has been working. Now that's how machine-to-machine connections will need to work, right? To take this to the next level. So from consumer, IoT is now going to enterprise and operational technology. IT is all about, closed room, AC, 21, 22 degrees, all the routers, switches, controllers, servers. That is IT. OT is outdoor technology. OT is your CCTV camera at 35 degrees right now in the morning in Chennai, Bangalore, Mumbai. It doesn't have AC. One, it doesn't have a 220 volts AC cable also. The other AC, alternate current. It doesn't have DC also. So what's the power source? Yes, you guessed it right. So IoT has a different breed of networks. They're called as LPWANs, low power wide area networks. They all need batteries. Yeah, they are like the silent Teslas, right? You don't need energy source below the ground, which is fossil fuel oil. You need energy source above the ground, which is solar or electric. So for that matter, start thinking about IoT operational technologies like connected vehicles, intelligent buildings, energy saving smart grids, predictive maintenance for farming, data science for farmers, huge ships, cargoes, terminals. All of them are now imagining just, even bridges, highways, ports, land measurement, drones, not just to measure the land, but also to accurately actually predict weather patterns, weather balloons, all of them now getting integrated. Huge ecosystem, billions and billions of points. So the analytics, analytics means what? If you're flying 50 drones right now over the city of Chennai to measure, or let's say measure air pollution, or to distribute COVID vaccines, you can't just do the job. You need to have analytics, right? Analytics demands computing. So you need some sort of AI/ML software running on a computer. That's what we call as predictive analytics. It has to be closer to the ground. If you're doing all the sensing by the drones and all the activities closer, And then you're sending all the data to, say, a Cisco cloud or a Amazon cloud, which is taking 3 or 4 seconds, right? Because that is a latency over which. So normally think about maybe 1/4 of a second it takes for your voice to go around the internet, 250 milliseconds. The more hops you have, the more time it will take. So latency and throughput and bandwidth are always precious when it comes to networking terms. So IoT believes in breaking down and bringing the cloud closer to the ground. And that's called as a fog or an edge compute network. So when you want really, that kind of response in milliseconds, you need sensors and you need a fog or edge compute closer. That's when the real-time data. So it's like all of you on bikes, and the municipality of Chennai Corporation, municipal corporation, right, has CCTV cameras at every signal points. If all of your braking signals are jumping red lights, I'm not encouraging you to, but just imagine. And if all that license plate recognition analysis is going to happen in the cloud, it will probably take 15, 20 minutes, right? So what they have is a private cloud. So the traffic municipality, or you could just say Parivahan, which is the national traffic authority, they all have little clouds for each city. So if you jump a signal, your license plate recognition has happened. Doesn't matter who is driving, your nice pretty picture with the camera and a nice challan, please pay within 3 months or 2 months. So that's what keeps happening. Okay. There's a chat. Let me just see if there's a question for me. No. All right. Let me just give you a few more examples because we are on this. Yeah, if you now look at, for example, transportation. Okay, we all know, right? I mean, everyone knows. I mean, all of you will be far better than me even to say the problems what transportation causes. But ideally, is it just about minimizing vehicles, thinking about pollution? There's a big factor which is also about optimization. Right? So all of these things have to work together. Ideally, the roads are there. Every city has good roads. Chennai has beautiful roads. I've been there so many times. Beautiful infrastructure. Are they optimally utilized? Are the signals in a synchro mesh? So if you have thermal imaging cameras with the right traffic density calculators and sensors at each signal, you exactly will always, through the good modeling techniques, ensure that nobody's waiting for more than 40 seconds at a signal, 30 seconds. You can interlink all the signals. Trains have sensors, right? Traditional sensors have been there, but now the new high-speed trains need something more. So they all have fiber going right next to the railway tracks in between, because you have that very high data, and which needs to go at the fastest speed of light. So at 30,000 kilometers per second is what the data needs to travel, because we need to make those decisions in real time. So optimization of industries is just one example. You can think about transportation even in cities. You can think about the retail shops. The list can be just going on and on. Think about healthcare, patients, right? When you welcome them, when you have closed loop monitoring, the moment a patient gets admitted, you have this smart tag in a hospital, and you don't have to move the patients. For example, you know how painful it is if you have a patient admitted, let's say it's for a knee surgery, and then there is a chest X-ray to be taken. You put him or her on a wheelchair, you go to the radiology lab, and then discover, oh, the person already has 3 patients. Then you need to wheel him back. Just a smart tag. Everything is connected. The nurses, the doctors, the ward boys, the surgeons, the doctors, the visiting doctors, and the consumers. Closed loop monitoring, right? And that's what, when you exchange data in the rightful way, it becomes meaningful. So a lot of industries are taking notice. Now it's all about IoT and AI/ML. It's all about speak up, done, right? So you have Domino's Pizza, you have Alexa integration, or you have Siri integration in a laptop. You can just say, okay, Alexa, order pizza, and Domino's software will recognize that. Okay. You have Capital One, or the trading or the financial company. You have Samsung Galaxy S8, which is having Bixby. That's like Siri for Samsung. You have various apartments. Now, even, I think the new Reliance stores are going to have virtual assistants. So all of this is changing. It's changing rapidly, and there is a reason for this. The smart store revolution is not just about eliminating people. And people look at this from a very singular lens, that everything has to be fast, simple. No, it's all about giving you a better experience. For example, in the Converse shops, right? The popular footwear shops, I'm sure some of you heard about it. Simple canvas shoes. You can design your own sneaker. So while you're in the shop, and if you go and say, I want something of little peach, little military green, little black, and little neon, and the shoe can actually be designed by a 3D printer and be shipped back to your home by the time you reach home. So a lot of this, experiments are being, we all thought Amazon, yes, Amazon 99.99% is on the cloud, but they still have open Amazon Go stores. There are no people there. You just go in, if you're a Prime or Amazon customer, while coming out, you're automatically bill and checked. There's nothing. You just go and pick up. It's all safe and secure. Okay. Similarly, the vehicles, Mahindra, Ford, all of these people are now experiencing centers where you can go to the next level. We'll, if time permits, right? And I wanted to, because this is like the tea coffee combination, right? Or rather, I would say the milk tea or the milk coffee combination. Both technologies existed, both were huge, but both are now really going to usher in the next 8 or 10 years. Mind-boggling. The rate, the pace at which things will intersect, it will drive the entire IT, software, telecom, whatever you may call industries, right? So massive IoT, I like to use that word, accelerated rather by 5G. So for those of you who are not from this telecom software world or hardware world, I was more on the software side. And for the last 9 or 10 years, when I'm doing my research here, this is what I found. So the first 2 generations, I don't think anybody of us has seen, right? So India kind of started with 2.5G or 2G, simple SMSs, little data, half Mbps of data was what 3G promised you. It promised 1 MB, but people hardly got half MB. And then from 2010s, so every year, every decade has been one generation. That's why the G. So 2010, US started rolling out 4G with AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, all of those people. Europe embraced it. And we obviously, I like to say this very, very proudly, that we let the early adopters commit to the mistakes. So if they take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hops, we come after 3 or 4 years and we take one single hop. So by 2014, when we started with 4G, look at 2022 now, in 6 years flat, we pretty much have 4G everywhere. At least I would say more than 100% of the urban population and over 50% of the rural population. And it is not just 4G like 1 Mbps or 4 Mbps. It's really constant good 4G or LTE advanced with broadband data. All of you probably use that for the last 2 years to link to your colleges. Okay, and still it doesn't stop there because it's still not reliable. Again, same parameters: bandwidth, how big is your pipe, delay or latency as we call it. So every time you're talking right now, if you're seeing me on Zoom, my rate of speech, right? So if it is 40 words per minute, you have to listen to that. The Nyquist theorem, the Shannon's theorem gets in the way, and the pulse code modulation happens. So you have to make sure my voice audible packets are digitized, companded, so compressed, expanded, and you're listening. And then my hand gestures, my eyebrows, everything you're seeing at real-time speed. Now, this would not ideally be very good on a 4G, but that is just one of the use cases. So 5G is all about digitization. That's why 5G, consider them as the power of 3 ones. So you get 1 gigabit speed, you can connect 1 billion devices or more, and the latency literally of the networks, the telecommunication networks. So if 3G was around, I would say 500 milliseconds latency end to end, 4G was around 100 milliseconds, 5G brings it down to 10 or even 5. Okay. So when you have robotic arm just sensing 100 things, within 1 second, it makes that connection. So 1 millisecond, 1 billion devices, and 1 gigabit speeds. Now that's tested in the labs. I know. Ideally, even if you get half of that, it's still a great problem. So 4G was tested for 75. What we are getting is probably between 30 and 40. It's still good. If 5G is tested in the labs with the devices, and Cisco is building the software and the hardware infra, and Google is rolling the apps, and Amazon is putting the SaaS applications, from 1 gig, I think even if you get 500 to 700 megs, it's still good, right? So I would say for 5G, I think the nicest way to imagine would be look at radio. So there are two new technologies. First of all, simple, by now I think all of you know, right? Frequency and wavelength have an inversely proportional relationship. So higher the frequency, shorter the wavelength. Okay. So 4G typically, the frequency was between 1 and 1.8 gigahertz. As you go higher, so 5G is supposed to be high frequency, so the wavelength obviously will reduce, which means the distance the signal will travel will be less. So if the signal can travel less distance, obviously the immediate thing you'll raise your hand and say, Subodh, that means we need more 5G towers. Well, yes and no, and we'll come to the answer for that. Okay, but consider this, right? So 5G operates in all the bands. It is actually a shared spectrum technology too. So it can share the same spectrum which 4G was using by a unique software technology, right? So it can share a spectrum, DSS, dynamic spectrum sharing. It can operate in the mid-band, so between, I would say, 3 to 6 gigahertz. And above the 6 gigahertz is what we call as a millimeter wave, the high band. Okay, so these three bands are what countries are building. We have more than 110 operators now deploying 5G in the world. India will just start auctioning the highways. So the spectrum auction, which means among this red, green, and blue, which of the bands should we use? I think I'm getting a sense we'll be somewhere between the 3 and the 6 gigahertz, right? Because that way it's the best trade-off, and nobody's using them. It's right now reserved for military research purposes. So it's all a matter of government first opening up. It is basically air frequencies, spectrum as we call it. And then you decide and say, okay, Reliance, you're buying half a gigahertz. Airtel is buying half a gigahertz. Voda Idea is buying this. And then they will go and roll out the networks. Oh, by the way, the networks are already ready. So all the testing for geo platforms, Voda Idea, Airtel is done. It is just a matter of literally turning off the button called give me my air frequency, which they will get from the government. And then suddenly, if all of you buy your 4G, 5G phones, you'll start talking 5G, hopefully, in a year from now. Okay, but two innovations have happened. And I would use something called as massive MIMO. So massive multiple input, multiple output. So think about that as you can, instead of a standard one antenna in, one antenna out, you now have 16 antennas in, 16 antennas out, multiple input, multiple output, like a multiplexer. And then beamforming. And this kind of takes care of that question I asked you, would I need more 5G towers? So now for the first time, from the world of passive antennas, we are going to active antennas. So we can actually position a signal, exactly. So think about a 5G tower right outside your Sairam college gate. When it is transmitting the dish, it accurately senses that a user endpoint is there. It cannot reach him directly, so it will, the beam which goes, it will calculate where exactly the beam should go and scatter further. So the reflection surfaces are used very actively. So there is an algorithm on how you scatter your beams. And that's why this core pillars, if you want to understand for 5G, it's obviously the radio side, the network side, the platform, the APIs, and then all of that connected together. Okay. So in a way, if you want to look at 5G, think about these 5 pillars. And obviously, I'm going to add this. So this is a busy slide. So let's spend maybe one more minute just talking more on it. So when I say open radio, now I mean till 4G, there was no TCP/IP right inside the radio network. It was called as RAN, and you all know it was using a protocol. It had its own OSI stack. So there was a physical layer, a MAC layer, a PDLC layer, a service access point layer, and radio packets were then converted to Ethernet. So radio and Ethernet protocols transmitted to the fiber cable, which is right below your 4G tower. And then the TCP/IP network used to begin. Now, the world of software-defined networking and NFV, network function virtualization, has entered the radio world. So in simple word, it means if there are 5 entities in the RAN, radio access network, that's where your cell site tower is, that 4G tower or right outside your college, all the components there can now be virtualized in software. That's a huge thing. That's what SDN is, right? Separation of control plane and data plane. And now that's why it's called as software-defined RAN or SDRANs. And in 4G, if you were talking about E node Bs, in 5G, we call them G node Bs, G, next generation. Or you can just say 5G NR, next generation radio. And you can now even have Wi-Fi 6, the latest generation of Wi-Fi, which is in your homes, and 5G work together. IP transport now goes to the next level. Innovation in silicon, optics, you get very high transmission speeds. There are protocols like segment routing. Edge compute, that layer which we spoke about, the fog, that uses intelligent services edge. And then the world of software-defined networking. So there is 2 or 3 centralized controllers, which will all ensure all the functions of the 5G network are transmitted. So if 5G is having, if all of us are having 5G calls right now on a video call, it will understand this is a multi-streaming and it will reserve the bandwidth that much. If all of us are in 300 different cities, it will start caching. If we are evolving from factories, or if we are in factories in a noisy environment, it can give us more latency. So all that thing happens in software. So you have to really understand, it's like 5G is really the next evolution for so many industries as well. And when it touches IoT, it becomes certain very special things. Okay. So I'll leave you with that. Typically, what does an IoT project really entail? Oh, it's my clock just beeped. So we just finished 45 or 50 minutes. Okay. Can I go on for maybe 5 to 7 more minutes? Just a case study for a smart city. Is that okay, Brinda ma'am, or should I stop now? Yeah, I was just wondering, can I go for 5 more minutes, or is it time? Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Shall we have a break for 10 minutes, sir?
Yeah, no, I was asking, should I go on? I just have another 7 to 10 minutes, a case study for a city.
Okay,
and
sir.
then we can open up for
sir.
questions. But if you, I'm asking, can I go on, or I can stop now and take questions? Either way.
Yeah, you can take 5 more minutes, sir. Then we will go for questions.
Okay, yeah, 5 more minutes. Perfect. All right. So typical an IoT project, whether it's a factory, a city, or even the corporations, will have this 6 stages, right? There will be things. There's a network. There's a software connectivity management. Then the app layer, and then the business gets mapped to it. So now, if you map this to cities, right? Same stack, same 6-layer stack. Think about the problems in cities. This is how smart cities get developed, right? And this is now an industrial case study. So I want you to pay close attention. I'll show you how it works. In fact, right here in a few cities, we've done it. Navi Mumbai has it, Pune has it, Jaipur has it, Bangalore has it. We're also trying this for the Kamuti airport in Kerala. And most of the airports now have it, right? So lighting, parking, environmental, urban mobility, safety, security, waste management. Huge problems. You have to start from the problems first. Now, when you think about those problems, right now what happens is we have dedicated systems for each of them. So parking may have certain software system, by just taking an example. Let's say an old legacy SAP or Oracle system. Lighting may have something from Philips or Johnson Snyder. And that's where what it happens. So everybody is doing something, but they're not exchanging data. So if all of us are going, let's say, to an amphitheater in Gindi, right? Let's say event center. And we want to know what is the traffic situation. We want to know if there's parking there. We want to know what is the waste bin management there. We want to know what is the pollution levels. If these systems are not talking to each other, you'll have limited sharing. And that's where the word called silos comes in. So efficiently, when you connect everything together, what happens is you'll start seeing dashboards like this. So this is for Jaipur. Jaipur, we all know, pink city, but that main 6 square kilometer area where all that forts and the tourists, where almost, I would say every day around 30,000 people come and visit, especially in winters, just to explore the city, right? So you have 30,000 more tourists. So you need things which talk to each other. Okay, so a smart city dashboard is a single play a single pane of operations for lighting. You exactly know you can turn on and off the lighting just by the click of a button or a thumb press. So if nobody tourist is there, why keep the lights on? Or better yet, keep the sensors with motion detectors. So the moment a pedestrian or a vehicle comes, say between 50 to 75 meters, turn the lights on, with piezoelectric sensors. Similarly for parking. If before going to the street, the amphitheater, the place, the tourist area, if you already knew parking exactly to the last parking slot, it's like, it is nirvana, I'm telling you. Right now, the main concern for all of you, even if you're taking your bikes, especially in the crowded streets, is, hey, will I get parking? Will I not? And you pretty much use that toss a coin approach, or we look at Google Maps. That is just green, yellow, red. That's it. Right? That's not enough. It's not 29%, right? Urban mobility. So we combine the Google Maps and the parking lots, and we allow stores in the main streets to auction their parking lots as well, and even the pollution levels. If you knew exactly this is less than 10 particulate matter per minute, which is good for senior citizens to walk, which is good for you folks to meet up in the gardens, you exactly know which streets to avoid, at what point of the day, what is the nitrous dioxide level, what is the carbon monoxide level. Similarly, are all the CCTV cameras on, capturing the feeds and relaying to the law enforcement authorities? Waste management, right? We have trucks, those green or orange trucks coming either every day morning, say 8 a.m. or 10 a.m., or they're coming every Wednesday or Thursday. Either way, they're coming at a time when your dustbin is either not full or overfull, right? So if you put smart sensors on the dustbins, which directly talk to the city waste agency, and the trucks only go to those streets where they've clearly got a dustbin is more than 50% full. So you minimize the trips of the truck. You save diesel, petrol, you save effort. Most important, citizens happy, the municipality happy, the truck sufficiently utilized, everyone is happy. So these are some of the things which are possible. This is how in software it looks like, right? I'll just show it to you. For example, let's say now you might say, if I need to go and define a policy, this is like a rule. And I say, okay, I'm just taking an example. Say Marina Beach, right? A place where most of you go in the evenings. Let me put a fare policy or a parking policy, okay? And I create a policy saying from 6, okay, to this time, there is a no parking policy. So that way, and this portal is open for everyone. Everyone can go and just go and build this. And if there's an event, like if there's an overcrowding, I can put a trigger and immediately it will go red light. If the parking lots are auctioned, is there enough light? Is there a security threshold I need to factor in? So all of those things can be factored, okay? This is how simple intrusion detection happens. That is on the right, as you see, a public rail line or a railroad, as we call it. Or it could just be a shunting garage. But if you have this person who's using that railway lines to cross over, so from you see from the red zone, the thermal imaging camera has caught him or her entering the private space. Now, this could be either a water station, a public utility grid, but that thing has to be caught in real time. You see that? So immediately there was an alert. I'll run it again. So have a look at it. Okay. So that's that alert. And that's what it precisely detects. So that red thing, and within, like, by the time you finish a sentence, you exactly know the cameras are alerted. Similarly, obviously, this is what happens on weekends, so Friday nights especially, right? You have people damaging. Now, this person obviously took the shortcut, right? I don't know for what reason, but he just took the shortcut, went over the curb and knocked down that traffic sign. And that window to capture his license plate was less than 2 seconds, but it still got captured. So license plate detection is very active in Mumbai, Pune. I think even in some areas of Chennai. I'll get back to you on that. But airports have this. So LPR, it's pretty active. That's what IoT works does for you, right? So think about it. Think about all the ways in which you could do this. Simple vehicle counters, right? So if you're relaying information to the next traffic lights, you're optimizing the traffic frequency. So SPAT, signal, phase, and timing, can be achieved. you will exactly have roads being utilized exactly. So you can see now here, the left-hand side is hardly being used, and then you have the right-hand side overcrowded. So the signals on the left-hand side will be faster. All right, I'll stop here. But any questions you have, I just thought, I should show it to you, but I'll leave you with this. Okay. And any questions you may have?
Yes, sir, we have one question.
Yeah, sure.
Good morning, I'm Paul Danaby speaking. My question to you is, in your presentation, you had made NR, new radio, which is deployed in 5G. You have told OFDMA, orthogonal frequency division multiplex. What is the difference between the cyclic prefix OFDMA and normal OFDMA? Because in NR, the downlink is on cyclic prefix OFDMA and uplink is on cyclic prefix OFDMA. In 4G, if you take, the downlink is on OFDMA, uplink is on single carrier FDMA. The reason behind 3GG PP specification going for that is to provide peak average, high PAPR, peak average power ratio. That is, you have a handset where the battery consumed by the handset is less. So, how you are achieving using OFDMA, this high PAPR in 5G, if you are using OF, because as per 3GPP specification, it is cyclic prefix OFDMA downlink and uplink is cyclic.
Yeah, I think you pretty much answered. There was no question there, to be honest with you. But yeah, what you described in 4G and LTE, Paul, there is OFDM, there is no A. What you really get is clean air radio technology. The battery optimization, as you rightly pointed out, that is there. And by the word orthogonal, you all know, right? The signal and the control plane. You're making sure you're using. So there is very efficient utilization of spectrum. That's one. And that's why it's orthogonal. You will always ensure the carrier aggregation, the bits get transmitted at that time. The target waiting time is controlled. And this is, by the way, the same technology which was used in 4G, but now more efficiently. That's why we just call it OFDMA. It is also, by the way, the same radio technology used for Wi-Fi 6. So the protocol is 802.11 AX, and that's Wi-Fi 6 or 6E, which is now going to be the future of Wi-Fi. So what we have in our homes could be Wi-Fi 5 up to 1 giga, but Wi-Fi 6 brings all the benefits of 4G and 5G, but for Wi-Fi. And you all know Wi-Fi is free, right? It is called as unlicensed wireless, whereas 5G is a licensed thing. You get a SIM, you pay a provider. Wi-Fi is, everybody in the world agrees, 2.4 gigs and 5 gigs will be used. And yeah.
So my second question to you is, you were specifying in your specification, low power wide area network is used by IoT sensors. So my question to you is, there are two radio concepts in 5G. One is massive MIMO and millimeter wave. Millimeter wave is operating on 26 gigahertz. Massive MIMO is operating on 3.5 gigahertz, which is sub 6 gigahertz. And millimeter wave is operating on above 6 gigahertz. So IoT sensors are low power. So the radiation of wave is very high. So how do you interface IoT sensors to that? Low power.
I think it's very imperative to understand 5G has a different spectrum, right? IoT sensors operate in the sub 1 gigahertz, Paul. So when I say sub, I mean below 1 gigahertz. And that spectrum is unlicensed. It's called as LoRa, L-O and R-A. It stands for long range. You can Google it up. That's why they're called as low power WANs. So LoRa is like Wi-Fi because it is unlicensed. And LTE and 5G also have their licensed version for IoT. And that is called as NB-IoT, narrow band hyphen IoT. Or earlier it used to be called LTE M1, which was LTE for mobiles. So just to clarify, for India, for example, between 850 megahertz and 870. So 868 is what is being used for India. So all countries have agreed and they've taken some unlicensed spectrum. LoRa is the one which is most efficiently used. Tata has built a LoRaWAN network. Reliance has built. You can connect all your electricity meters, everything, smart metering, everything. In fact, Bescom in Bangalore uses a LoRa network, right? LoRaWAN. We just call it LoRaWAN. Or so when you say 5G and you're mixing the upper band, those are meant for what we use for the phones and the devices, right? IoT doesn't need to operate that. For IoT, this is enough because you're just transmitting small minuscule data. You don't need that very high bandwidth.
Okay. But all your use cases require IoT sensors, no? Because see, when I'm simulating a vehicle identification, you're telling all those things. I have sensors which are operating on low power. So how the interface to the radio happens? Because radio is on sub 6 gigahertz and above 6 gigahertz. So to practically implement, because how do you do that? That's what is my question to you. Hope I got the right thing.
No, you're asking the right questions, right? So if I may say so, for vehicles,
use cases you require sensors, IoT sensors for simulating use cases. So if those are going to operate on low power, but the radio is working on sub 6 gigahertz and 26 gigahertz, which is massive MIMO and millimeter wave. So what will be the interface that will take a place which will match the low power and high power? That's my question. Because the maximum radiation power from massive MIMO, I think DOT has given some specification, which is fitting what LTE has told. But so far for millimeter wave, they are not given the maximum radiation power from the millimeter wave radio. That's my question.
No, I think time out. I think you're mixing three different domains of technology, right? So let's be clear. 5G has bands. IoT has a single band, sub-gigs. We're not talking about vehicle-to-vehicle communications. You have to look from an industry lens. Obviously, if you're connecting two vehicles, a vehicle under the hood may have.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, I got muted for some time. I'm not sure if Paul heard my response, but maybe if you're dealing the next speaker, we can take this offline or when I visit your campus next. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your knowledge with us. Sir, kindly accept the e-memento as a token of gratitude.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. That's nice of you.
Kindly accept this.
All right. All right. I take this with a fair degree of pride and great to meet you. Great questions from Paul and everyone. Enjoyed it. Hopefully, I get a chance to see you all guys in person in a few months. Thank you, Dr. Brinda, for organizing this.
Thank you, sir. Welcome, sir. Welcome. We will meet with another program, sir. Definitely.
Yeah, we should do an FDP actually, just like an industry FDP whenever you get a chance. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely, sir.
All
Thank
right.
you, sir. Okay.
All right.